The first thing I felt was frost on my teeth, and that's how I knew someone was about to die. Not metaphorical frost, not poetic dread. Actual, metallic cold blooming along my gums like I'd bitten into winter itself. That sensation had saved my life more times than I could count. My body noticed danger before my brain caught up, a leftover survival glitch from too many nights running and not enough mornings waking up in the same place twice. The northern transport hub was dead the way only northern places ever were, concrete ribs exposed, rails half buried in ice, wind howling through broken signage like it was practicing how to scream. Frost clung to the handrails in thin white veins. The air smelled of metal and old electricity, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. Nobody stayed here unless they had no choice, which meant someone had followed me. I adjusted the collar at my throat. Not because it was tight, but because habit is a kind of prayer. Black composite, no markings, voluntary, chosen. People like to misunderstand that part. Footsteps echoed where echoes shouldn't exist. Measured, unhurried. I didn't turn right away. If you run every time your instincts twitch, you end up exhausted, or dead. I waited until the footsteps stopped exactly 6 meters behind me. Let me guess, I said, staring at the frost-laced tracks. You're either here to arrest me, recruit me, or kill me. If this is small talk, I'm leaving. Silence. Then a voice, low, even, stripped of inflection like it had been trained out. Sasha Morozov. Omega. Former resident of the northern stacks. I closed my eyes. Of course. I turned. He stood perfectly straight, shoulders squared, hands visible and relaxed at his sides. No visible weapons. No insignia. Northern issue coat, dark gray, cut with military precision. Snow dusted his boots like it respected him enough to land gently. His presence was wrong, not threatening, empty.
If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting.
Damien nodded. I didn't need to ask. You're blocking my exit, I said. That's rude where I'm from. You're from the north, he replied. Rudeness is expected. I snorted despite myself. They really did sand you down, didn't they? His eyes flicked to my collar. Just for a fraction of a second, long enough for me to see the judgment snap into place. Alpha. That's what he thought. By authority of the Northern Veteran Council, he said. You are to be returned for questioning. Questioning? I smiled, all teeth. That's what they called it last time, too. Funny how nobody ever came back. Your cooperation will be noted, and my non-cooperation? His gaze lifted to meet mine. Flat. Unblinking. Unnecessary force. There it was. The frost flared sharper, biting down hard enough to ache. My pulse jumped. You know, I said lightly, for someone who came all this way, you don't smell like an alpha. That got me something. A pause so brief it might have been imaginary, but I felt it. Then the world screamed. The shot cracked from above, shattering concrete where Damien had been standing a heartbeat earlier. A second round sparked against the rail behind me. Not warning fire. Clean. Precise. Down. I shouted, already moving. Damien reacted instantly, but not fast enough. I grabbed his coat and yanked him sideways, as a third impact detonated where his chest would have been. The force slammed us both into the wall, knocking breath from my lungs in a sharp, painful burst. The frost on my teeth burned now. Ice cold and electric. Sniper, I hissed. East Gantry? He rolled to a knee, scanning. Calm. Too calm. You should run. I laughed, breathless and a little hysterical. Congratulations, Nord. If I run, they'll kill you faster. Another shot. I shoved him hard, and it clipped his shoulder instead of his spine. Blood bloomed dark against gray fabric. He didn't cry out. That scared me more than the bullets. Why? He asked, voice unchanged, as I dragged him toward the service tunnel. Instinct, I snapped. And because if you die, they don't need you to bring me in alive. The tunnel swallowed us in shadow and damp air. My hands shook as I slammed the access panel closed behind us. For the first time, Damien Nord looked at me, not like a file, not like a target. Like a problem. You broke protocol, he said. I met his gaze, teeth still aching with cold. Yeah. You broke my night. Outside, boots thundered. The hunt had started. And somehow, against every rule I'd ever lived by, I wasn't running alone anymore. By the time we reached the safe apartment, Damien's blood had soaked through. 3 layers of fabric and my nerves were vibrating like exposed wires. The place was warm in the way only illegal places ever were. Overheated radiators. Mismatched lamps, light that hummed faintly instead of flickering. The air smelled of ozone from overloaded electronics and antiseptic sharp enough to make my eyes sting. An old kettle rattled on the stove like it was offended to be awake. I locked the door, sealed the dampeners, and finally let myself breathe. "Sit," I said, already digging through the med kit hidden behind a loose wall panel. "I'm functional," Damien replied. "Great. Be functional over there." He complied. Of course he did. Straight-backed even while bleeding, jaw set like pain was just another inconvenience someone had forgotten to file paperwork for. I knelt in front of him and cut the ruined coat away. The wound wasn't fatal, but it was ugly, clean entry, burned edges. Military-grade round. "Lucky you," I muttered. "If they wanted you dead, we wouldn't be having this charming domestic moment." I didn't authorize charm. Tragic. As I cleaned the wound, I felt his gaze settle on my throat. Not my hands. Not the knife. The collar. The shift was instant. His posture tightened. His shoulders drew back, spine going rigid like a weapon being safetied. "You're collared," he said. I didn't look up. Excellent observation. By whom? No one. That's not how it works. I taped the wound a little harder than necessary. Funny. It works just fine. He caught my wrist. Not aggressively, but firm enough to stop me. His touch was cold, not temperature-wise, but wrong. Controlled to the point of erasure. "Omegas do not self-collar," he said, voice clipped. "It indicates prior ownership." I laughed. It came out sharp. "You people really do build your world out of assumptions, don't you?" I pulled my hand free and stood, forcing him to look up at me. "I chose this," I said. "No scent tags, no claims, no accidental bonds. It keeps idiots from thinking they get a say in my body." His eyes darkened. "That is not freedom," he said. "That is compliance trained so deep you mistake it for control." Something in his voice cracked. Not loudly. Just enough. I felt my temper spike. "You don't get to tell me what my freedom looks like. You think wearing a symbol of submission makes you untouchable?" "I think it makes people back off," I snapped. "Including alphas who assume everything with a pulse is theirs to manage." For the first time since I'd met him, Damien's composure slipped. His jaw clenched. His breathing went shallow. "That collar exists to mark ownership," he said. "To erase choice. And yet," I shot back, "here I am. Choosing." The room went quiet except for the kettle clicking off. He looked away first. That told me more than anything else could have. I went back to cleaning the wound, movements brisk, efficient. "You were set up," I said, switching gears before we both said something unrecoverable. "That wasn't random. Northern contractors don't freelance." "I'm aware." "Good. Because whoever ordered that hit knew exactly where you'd be standing." He processed that fast. Too fast. "The order came through internal channels. Which means," I added, "someone wanted you dead enough to burn an asset." His eyes lifted to mine. Cold again. But now there was something underneath. Calculation. Anger. "My directive was retrieval," he said slowly. "Alive. And now?" A pause. "Now," he said, "the mission parameters have changed." I smirked, despite myself. "Welcome to improvisation, Nord. It's terrifying." He stood, testing the wound. Barely flinched. "You should have let me die," he said. "Yeah," I replied, grabbing 2 mismatched mugs and pouring hot water over tea leaves that might have been illegal. "But then I'd be alone with people who don't miss." I handed him a mug. He stared at it like it might explode. "Drink," I said. "It's tea. Not a trap." After a moment, he did. Our eyes met over chipped ceramic. Whatever had brought him here to claim me had shattered in that transport hub. And whatever was coming next, we were in it together, whether he liked my collar or not. Kai's place looked like a fire hazard that had learned to cook. The door opened on the 3rd knock and half a curse, releasing a wave of heat, ozone, and something that smelled like reheated noodles pretending to be soup. Racks of servers lined the walls in uneven towers, their lights blinking in asynchronous rhythms like nervous habits. Cables snaked across the floor. Someone had taped glow-in-the-dark arrows pointing to the bathroom, which felt both unnecessary and deeply comforting. Kai Thermos Reeves grinned at me like I'd just walked into a surprise party he hadn't had time to clean for. "Sasha," he said, dragging my name out like a song lyric. "You look terrible." I assume that means things are exciting. Hi Kai, I replied. This is Damien. Try not to sell him. Kai's gaze flicked to Damien and stalled. Just for a second. Not fear. Assessment. Wow, he said. You brought the North into my house. That's either brave or suicidal. I'm voting both, I said. Damien stepped inside like he was entering a briefing room instead of a chaos nest. His eyes scanned exits, corners, the ceiling. He stood where the walls were strongest, where no cable crossed too close to his boots. Kai noticed. Of course he did. Military? Kai asked, voice casual. Veteran, Damien replied. Figures, Kai said, stepping aside. You smell like discipline and bad decisions. Kitchen's that way. Don't touch the red kettle. Damien nodded once. Kai leaned toward me and stage whispered. Does he always look like he's one sentence away from ordering an airstrike? Only when he's relaxed, I said. I set up at my usual terminal, 3 screens, mismatched keyboards, one chair that knew my spine better than most people ever had. The servers hummed louder as I logged in, recognizing me like an old dog lifting its head. Someone tried to kill him, I said, fingers already flying. Professional. Northern grade. Kai sobered instantly. That's inconvenient. Trace any chatter, I said. Contracts, Merc chatter, sudden spikes in please erase this. On it. Behind me, Damien stood too still. He didn't pace. Didn't hover. Didn't assert space the way alphas usually did when dropped into unfamiliar territory. No scent flooding. No territorial flair. Just observation. Mechanical. Like he was waiting for the next instruction to unlock. I noticed. I always noticed. My screens populated with data. Encrypted bursts, bounced signals, a pattern like a fingerprint. Someone had paid well. Someone with access. Internal channels, I muttered. You weren't wrong. Damien stepped closer, precise distance, eyes on the data like he understood more than he should. They knew my route. Which means, Kai added from behind a rack, they also know mine now. Fantastic. I'll compensate you, Damien said immediately. Kai laughed. Oh honey. That's not how friendship works in the apocalypse. I smiled despite the tension. He means, thank you. Damien glanced at me. I do not. You'll learn, I said. Another anomaly flickered across the screen. I frowned. What? Kai asked. You should have reacted by now, I said without looking away. To what? Damien asked. To me, I replied. I'm an unbonded omega in close quarters. You're bleeding. High stress. Any normal alpha would be noticeable. Kai froze mid-bite of something unidentifiable. Wait, you're telling me he's not even doing the whole chest puff dominance thing? Damien's expression didn't change, but his shoulders stiffened. I control my responses, he said. Or, I said softly, you don't have them. The room felt smaller, warmer. The servers hummed louder like they were listening. Kai cleared his throat. Okay, cool mystery, love it. Maybe let's not dissect the soldier while people are actively hunting us? I exhaled and leaned back, forcing myself to ease off. Observation, not accusation. Not yet. There's more, I said, pointing at the screen. The hit order was flagged for priority override. Someone high enough to rewrite protocol. Damien's jaw tightened. That should be impossible. Nothing's impossible, Kai said. Just expensive. Silence settled. Not hostile, not comfortable. Just aware. I watched Damien from the corner of my eye as he watched the data. Posture. Perfect. Reactions delayed by a fraction of a second too long. Not alpha timing. Not omega instincts. Something else. And for the first time since the transport hub, my frost-tinged instincts didn't scream run. They whispered watch. There are cold places. And then there is the kind of cold that lives inside a building designed to pretend it isn't cruel. Northern labs were like that. White walls. White floors. White lights that never warmed, only exposed. The air always carried the faint sting of sterilizer and metal as, if cleanliness could scrub away the fact that people vanished there. I hadn't thought about the North in months, not directly. I kept it in a sealed compartment in my head, tucked behind jokes and routines and the collar I chose. But staring at the data bloom across Kai's screens, watching the override codes pulse like a heartbeat, the compartment cracked. Okay, Kai said, voice softer than usual. This isn't regular contract stuff. This is institution stuff. Government? I asked. Worse, Damien replied. Beta elite, I finished, and my teeth ached with phantom frost. Damien's gaze shifted to me. Not quite a question, more like a confirmation of something he'd been unwilling to name. I turned back to the terminal and dove deeper. Encrypted packets, closed loops, the kind of security that didn't exist to keep strangers out, but to keep insiders quiet. I recognized the architecture like muscle memory. My fingers hesitated over the next command. It felt like stepping into a room where the air was still full of screams. You've been here before, Kai said quietly. I didn't answer, because answering would make it real. Instead, I slipped through the first barrier with a familiar trick. Old credentials, ghosted from a system that assumed I'd been erased. The server responded like a door unlatching. The files weren't labeled with names. They were labeled with categories. Omega, transferred. Omega, reassigned. Omega, decommissioned. My stomach clenched. Damien leaned in. His presence a controlled void. What is this? What they call it, I said, voice tight, when you don't want to write the word disappeared. Kai made a low sound behind me, half curse, half prayer. I clicked into the first set. White corridors flooded my memory. A hand on my shoulder, gloved, gentle in the way predators are gentle before they feed. A calm voice saying, "You're safe here. This is for your own good." A metal door sealing with a hiss. I remembered an Omega boy with trembling hands, sitting across from me in a holding room. He'd been laughing too hard, too brightly, like laughter could trick the walls into letting him go. "I'm just here for tests," he'd whispered. "My family says it's an honor." He'd asked my name. I'd lied. 2 days later, his bed was empty. Everyone pretended that was normal. I swallowed hard, forcing my eyes back to the present. "That's why I ran," I said, more to myself than to them. I didn't steal money. I didn't hack some lover's messages. I cracked their archives. Damien's eyes narrowed. "You exposed the program." "I tried," I said. "I pulled records, I set them to leak, but the network choked it down in under an hour. Like it had antibodies." Kai folded his arms, face pale. "You're telling me the North has a built-in immune system for corruption?" "It's not the North," I said. "It's who runs it." Another file opened on the screen. A name flashed in clean black text, as elegant as a signature. Vivian Crow. My throat went dry. "She's real," Kai breathed. I laughed without humor. "Oh, she's real." Vivian Crow wasn't a politician. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't even officially part of the Veteran Council. She was a beta with perfect hair and perfect manners, and an empire built on order. She spoke in televised charity galas about stabilizing society, about protecting Omegas from harmful instability, about safeguarding the future. I'd seen her in person only once, gliding down a corridor like she owned the air, pausing to smile at a row of restrained subjects as if they were interns who'd done well on a report. "Order," her voice had said. "Everything can be improved. Everything can be refined." Damien's hand clenched at his side. The first visible emotion I'd seen from him. Raw, fast and sharp as a blade. Anger. It flickered across his face and disappeared. But I caught it. Like a crack in ice. "You know her," I said. "She oversees strategic medical initiatives," Damien replied, but his tone had shifted, edges exposed. "Her influence is extensive." Kai's gaze ping-ponged between us. "You're saying she could authorize an override on a veteran retrieval order?" "I'm saying," I murmured, eyes locked on her name. "She could rewrite the whole damn world and call it a public service." A sound chimed. An incoming encrypted call. Kai glanced at the ID and went still. Damien? "You might want to see this." Damien stepped forward. The caller code was Northern Military, but the route was strange, bounced through civilian nodes like someone didn't want to trace. He accepted. A man's voice came through, low and controlled, but with strain under it. "Nord." Damien's posture snapped into attention. "Knox." So the shadow had a name. Knox sounded like an alpha who'd swallowed too many orders and never learned how to spit them out. "You're off route," Knox said. "And you're flagged." Damien didn't blink. "By whom?" A pause. "Then don't ask questions you don't want answered." My frost sensation tickled the edge of my teeth again. Warning, not of bullets, but of truth. Knox continued, softer now, almost human. "Listen. You need to disengage. Leave the Omega, return alone." Damien's jaw tightened. "The Omega saved my life." Silence. Then Knox said, very carefully. That's exactly why you need to stop. Whatever you think this is, it's bigger. And it's not about him. My breath caught. Not about me? Knox's voice dropped to a near whisper. It's about you, Nord. Don't dig. Don't look at the files. Don't. The line crackled. And before the call cut, I heard something that chilled me more than the North ever had. Fear. The system wasn't one villain. It wasn't even one woman with a pretty smile. It was a machine that could make veterans afraid to speak. And machines didn't care who they crushed. Night pressed in on the safe house like a held breath. Kai had gone quiet, retreated into the server room with headphones and a self-imposed rule of don't ask questions you don't want answers to. The rest of the apartment shrank down to one narrow stretch of warmth and shadow. The lamps dimmed low, the windows sealed tight. It left Damien and me too close. He stood near the wall, arms folded, posture precise even in rest. I paced, unable to settle, the data from the archives replaying behind my eyes on a loop I couldn't mute. Say something, I snapped. He looked at me. You're agitated. Oh, thank you, I said. I hadn't noticed. You're projecting, he continued calmly. Emotion clouds judgment. That did it. I stopped pacing and turned on him so fast my shoulder brushed his chest. The space between us vanished, replaced by heat and the sharp scent of antiseptic and ozone. Emotion is the only thing that makes judgment human, I shot back. You know what Crow does. You've seen the files. And you still wear their insignia. I wear nothing, he said. You wear them, I said, jabbing a finger at his chest. Every order you follow, every retrieval you justify. You call it structure. I call it service to a machine that eats people. His eyes hardened. The system maintains stability. Stability for who? My voice cracked, and that made me angrier. For the betas who never get their hands dirty? For the councils who turn living bodies into line items? His jaw tightened. Without structure, there is chaos. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You think what they do isn't chaos? You think disappearing omegas into white rooms is order? The air between us vibrated. Not with scent. Still nothing from him. But with something heavier. Like pressure before a storm. You don't understand, he said. And for the first time there was something raw under the words. If the system collapses, people die. They're dying already, I shot back. Just quietly. So you don't have to feel it. That hit. I saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, the fraction of a second where his control slipped and something sharp flashed across his face. Not guilt. Not shame. Fear. My teeth tingled. Not the sharp screaming frost of incoming violence, but a colder, deeper chill. Recognition. Truth. You follow orders because you're afraid of what happens without them, I said slowly. He stepped forward. Too fast. Too close. My back hit the wall. The warmth of it seeping through my shirt. His presence loomed, overwhelming not through dominance, but through restraint. Every instinct in me screamed to push, to bite, to do something. Say that again, he said, voice low. I swallowed. The frost spread along my gums like I was biting down on snow. You're not protecting anyone, I said. You're hiding inside a structure that doesn't let you choose. His hand came up, stopped inches from my throat. Not touching. Hovering. I felt it anyway. The potential. The violence. The intimacy of being that close to someone who could break you and didn't. Careful, he warned. You're provoking an outcome you won't like. I laughed softly, breath shallow. Funny. I was thinking the same. For a heartbeat we were teeth against teeth. Predators frozen mid-lunge, not sure whether to tear or kiss or run. The frost on my teeth burned, cold and electric. And then he stepped back. The moment snapped like a wire pulled too tight and finally released. Silence rushed in to fill the space. Damien turned away first, hands curling into fists at his sides. You don't know what you're asking me to risk, he said. I pushed off the wall, heart hammering. Neither do you. We stood there, breathing hard, the anger still crackling between us like static. I realized then that this wasn't just hatred, or even conflict. It was gravity, and gravity didn't care what side you were on, it just pulled. Outside the city slept, unaware that two people inside a borrowed room were standing on the edge of something sharp enough to cut them both. Neither of us moved, because somewhere between the anger and the frost, we both understood the same terrifying thing. Walking away would hurt more than staying. Mira's clinic was hidden 3 levels below a noodle shop that never closed and never asked questions. The air down there was warmer than the safe house, thick with antiseptic and recycled oxygen. Soft lights glowed amber instead of white, deliberately gentle. The walls were lined with old equipment, medical tech that had been stripped of corporate logos and reassembled by someone who trusted their hands more than manuals. Mira herself looked like she belonged nowhere and everywhere at once. Omega, mid-30s, hair pulled back with surgical efficiency, eyes sharp, with the kind of kindness that had learned when to stop apologizing. She didn't ask why we were here. She never did. "Sit," she said to Damien, voice calm, steady. "And don't lie to me. Your body already has." Damien complied. Again. Perfect posture, hands on his knees, gaze forward like this was a debriefing instead of an exam. I hovered near the door, arms crossed, nerves humming. The frost sensation had faded, but something heavier had settled in its place. Mira scanned him with a handheld diagnostic, her brow furrowing almost immediately. "That's interesting," she murmured. Damien's eyes flicked to her. "Define." She glanced at me. "How honest do you want me to be?" "As honest as you are alive," I said. She exhaled slowly and turned the screen so we could both see. The readings were wrong. Not damaged. Not corrupted. Layered. "I'm not detecting a standard alpha endocrine pattern," Mira said carefully. "What I am detecting is a suppression lattice wrapped around an omega base." The room went very still. Damien didn't move. Didn't breathe. "That's impossible," he said. Mira met his gaze. "No. It's expensive." I felt my stomach drop. She continued. "Clinical, but gentle. Your scent markers are artificially amplified. Your behavioral inhibitors are reinforced. The fight-or-flight responses have been rerouted to simulate alpha dominance." I finished quietly. Mira nodded. "You're not an alpha, Damien." The word "not" landed like a gunshot. He stared at the screen, then at his hands, like he expected them to look different. "That contradicts every record," he said. "Every evaluation." "Because the records are lying," Mira said. "Or more accurately, curated." Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "I was bred for command," Damien said slowly. "Trained, modified. I passed every threshold." "You were repurposed," Mira corrected. "For war." His fingers curled, then uncurled. "Then, what am I?" The question wasn't rhetorical. It cracked something open in my chest. "You're an omega," I said, voice low. "One they dressed up as something safer to control." He looked at me sharply. "Safer?" "For them," I replied. "An omega who doesn't feel, who doesn't bond, who doesn't question." His breathing went uneven. "That means," he said, words faltering for the first time, "that everything I am is a construct." Mira stepped closer. "No. It means parts of you were buried." "I don't." He swallowed hard. "I don't remember choosing this." "You wouldn't," she said softly. "No one does." The room felt too small. Too real. "I've seen this before," I said suddenly. They both turned to me. "In the archives," I continued. "Files flagged experimental. Omegas modified for strategic compatibility. Most of them didn't survive long enough to be deployed." Damien's eyes widened just slightly. "You knew?" "I didn't know it was you," I said. "I didn't know they succeeded." His jaw clenched. "So I'm a mistake." "No," I said fiercely. "You're proof." "Of what?" He snapped. "That they were willing to erase who you were to make you useful," I shot back. "And terrified you'd ever remember." He stood abruptly, knocking the chair back. The sound echoed too loud. "I don't exist," he said hoarsely. "If I'm not what I was built to be." "You exist," I interrupted. "You're standing right here." "Standing on a lie," he said. "Everything I trusted, my instincts, my rank, my purpose, was programmed," Mira said. "Not erased. Programmed." Damien's hands shook. That scared me more than bullets ever had. I stepped closer without thinking. "Hey," I said, quieter now. "You saved people. You made choices. Even inside their system." He laughed once, broken. "Did I? Or did I just execute code?" The frost crept back to my teeth. Not sharp this time, but numbing. "You're asking the wrong question," I said. He looked at me, eyes raw and unguarded. "The question isn't who they made you," I continued. "It's who you choose to be now that you know. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, very softly, I don't know how. Mira reached for the console. We can help you remember what they buried, she said. But it won't be painless. Damien closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the perfect soldier was gone. In his place was someone frightened, furious, and finally, real. Do it, he said. And for the first time, the order was his own. The plan was reckless. That was how I knew it might work. Mira spread the schematic across the main screen in the server room. Layers of code and biology overlapping in a way that made my head ache just looking at it. Neural suppressors. Hormonal governors. Behavioral locks nested inside adaptive feedback loops. Whoever designed Damien hadn't just modified him, they'd architected him. Kai stood behind me, chewing on a protein bar like it was personally responsible for his stress. So just to recap, he said, waving the bar for emphasis, we are about to jailbreak a human being. Mira didn't look up. Yes. Cool. Cool, Kai muttered. I once bricked a toaster doing less. Damien sat on the medical table, stripped down to undershirt and trousers, wires already attached to his temples and spine. He was very still. Too still. You don't have to do this, I said, for maybe the third time. He looked at me. Not through me. At me. I do, he said. If I don't, then everything I am stays theirs. That was it. No protocol. No rank. No borrowed certainty. Choice. Mira's fingers hovered over the console. Once we start, I can't pause it. The suppressors will fight back. Your nervous system will resist. What does that mean in non-medical terms? Kai asked. It will hurt, she said simply. And it may not work. Kai made a strangled sound. I would like to formally go on record as being against this. Damien's gaze didn't waver. Proceed. Mira nodded and initiated the sequence. The room dimmed as the servers spooled up, their hum deepening into something almost organic. Data streamed across the monitors. My territory. I slid into the interface instinctively, hands flying, catching runaway threads before they could snap. At first, nothing happened. Then Damien gasped. His back arched, muscles locking, breath tearing from his chest in sharp, broken pulls. The monitors spiked. Neural activity flaring like a storm. Okay, Kai said faintly. That's not great. I moved without thinking, stepping into Damien's space, grabbing his hand. His skin was hot. Sweat slicking his palm. Stay with me, I said. Don't let it take you under. His fingers clenched around mine like a lifeline. Pain rippled through him in waves, visible, undeniable. His jaw clenched, teeth bared. A sound tearing out of him that wasn't a scream but wanted to be. The frost sensation in my mouth flared, sharp and electric, like my body was mirroring his. And then, something shifted. The air changed. A scent hit me, sudden and raw. Not alpha dominance. Not artificial authority. Omega. Unfiltered. Alive. Damien's eyes flew open, pupils blown wide, breath shuddering. He choked on the word. I feel everything, Mira said softly. He laughed once, broken and incredulous. It's too much. That's the point, I said, gripping his hand harder. That's being real. Another surge ripped through him, but this time he didn't fight it. He leaned into it, shaking sweat-damp hair falling into his eyes. Kai wiped his face with both hands. I am never making fun of Omegas again. Ever. You people are terrifying. Minutes stretched like hours. Then the reading stabilized. Mira exhaled slowly. The lattice is disengaging. Damien sagged forward, breathing hard, forehead resting briefly against my shoulder. The contact was accidental, and then very much not. I froze. So did he. Neither of us pulled away. For a moment, there was no system, no hunt, no north. Just the quiet hum of servers, and the weight of another person trusting you enough to fall. Thank you, he murmured, voice rough. For what? I asked. For staying. I swallowed. Don't make it a habit. A weak huff of laughter brushed my collarbone. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were clearer than I'd ever seen them. Softer. Sharper. Present. I don't know who I am yet, he said. That's okay, I replied. Most of us are winging it. Kai pointed at the monitor. Good news, you're alive. Bad news, a lot of people are about to notice that. Mira met my gaze. The system will react. I nodded. Let it. Damien straightened, wincing slightly, then looked at me. Not as an order, not as an assignment. As an equal. Whatever comes next, he said. I choose it. And for the first time, the frost on my teeth melted into something dangerously close to hope. The system noticed. It always did. The first warning came as a flicker across my main screen. Latency where there shouldn't be any. A heartbeat of silence in the data stream. Then another. Then the servers screamed. Contacts, Kai said, already moving. Multiple. Digital and physical. Of course, I muttered, fingers flying. Would have been rude of them not to show up. The lights in Mira's clinic dimmed as power rerouted. Somewhere above us, something heavy slammed into a door. They're early, Mira said, calm as ever. Which means they're scared. Damien stepped up beside me, posture different now. Still controlled, but no longer hollow. His breathing was uneven. Scent sharp and real, flooding the cramped room with something that made my skin prickle. How long do you need? He asked. I scanned the data torrent rushing toward us. Firewalls collapsing, countermeasures deploying like teeth. 3 minutes to upload. 5 to make it permanent. You'll get 2, Kai said. Maybe less. That'll have to be enough. The North didn't hunt quietly. Their digital strike hit first. Precision malware designed to erase, not steal. To make people disappear again. This time without bodies. I welcomed it. Opening the archives, I said, voice steady despite my pulse hammering in my ears. All of them. Raw. No filters. Mira's eyes widened. Sasha. I know, I said. Once it's out, there's no putting it back. Damien met my gaze. No hesitation, just a single nod. Choice. The data surged. Files cascaded across my screens. Names, dates, transfers, modifications, footage. White rooms. Calm voices. Omegas restrained, sedated, smiling because they'd been told this was an honor. I routed the stream through every channel that mattered. Public nets, independent, journalists, rival councils. Watchdog AIs that lived to sniff out corruption. The truth didn't knock. It kicked the door in. Physical breach. Kai shouted. The outer door exploded inward, metal screaming as it buckled. Smoke poured into the corridor beyond the clinic. Damien moved without waiting for orders, placing himself between the door and the rest of us. Body a shield, eyes sharp and blazing with something that looked suspiciously like fury. Boots thundered closer. Then, stand down. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Knox stepped into the smoke, weapon lowered but ready, eyes locked on Damien. Nord, he said. You shouldn't be here. Damien didn't flinch. Neither should you. For a moment, the world held its breath. Behind Knox, soldiers hesitated. Orders hung unspoken in the air, heavy and uncertain. Knox's gaze flicked to the screens, just long enough. He saw the names. The footage. The truth, bleeding out into the world. His jaw tightened. They told us it was necessary, he said quietly. They told you a lot of things, I snapped from behind Damien. Funny how none of them involved consent. Knox swallowed. His grip on the weapon loosened. I was ordered to retrieve you, he said to Damien. Or terminate the operation. And now? Damien asked. Knox looked at the soldiers behind him. At the screens. At the choice standing in front of him. Now, he said, voice rough. I didn't see you. He stepped aside. The soldiers followed, some reluctantly, some with visible relief. The hunt faltered. On my screen, alerts exploded. Networks reacting, commentators shouting, councils scrambling to contain the damage. At the center of it all, one name trended like wildfire. Vivian Crow. Her public feed lit up with emergency statements, polished words about misinformation and stability and malicious actors. I pulled up a single file and hit play. Her voice filled the room, smooth and assured. Order requires sacrifice. Omegas are resilient. They exist to stabilize the whole. Silence followed. Then the world tore her apart. Sponsors withdrew. Councils demanded inquiries. Rival elites leaked their own caches to save themselves. Crow's image fractured in real time, composure cracking, eyes sharp with panic as she realized the machine she'd built was turning on her. She's done, Kai breathed. Not arrested. Not executed. Worse, Mira said softly. Exposed. The servers began to cool. The digital storm passed, leaving scorched ground in its wake. I slumped back in my chair, hands shaking, adrenaline crashing hard. Damien turned to me, eyes bright, alive in a way that made my chest ache. You did this, he said. No, I replied, exhausted but smiling. The truth did. I just opened the door. Outside, sirens wailed, not for us, but for a system scrambling to save face. The hunt had turned. And for the first time since I'd learned to feel frost on my teeth, the cold wasn't warning me to run. It was reminding me that even ice breaks if you hit it hard enough with the truth. The safe place this time wasn't underground or hidden behind 7 layers of encryption. It was quiet. A borrowed apartment on the edge of the city, high enough that the air felt cleaner, far enough that the noise softened into something like breathing. Morning light slipped in through half-open blinds, pale and cautious, as if it wasn't sure it was welcome yet. The world was still burning outside. News feeds rolled endlessly. Hearings announced, councils dissolved, arrests made in carefully neutral language. Words like investigation and restructuring were doing a lot of heavy lifting. The machine hadn't collapsed completely, but it was cracking, loud enough for everyone to hear. For the first time in years, I wasn't watching it over my shoulder. Damien stood by the window, mug in hand, watching the city wake up. He looked different. Not because of the clothes, plain, borrowed, nothing that marked rank or role, but because there was no tension pulling him upright anymore. Free was too small a word for it. They've terminated my status, he said, voice calm. Veteran designation revoked. Medical classification under review. I leaned against the counter. How do you feel about that? He considered the question seriously. Relieved. And angry. And empty. I nodded. Yeah. That tracks. He turned to face me, eyes steady. They can't claim me anymore. No, I said. They can't. Silence settled. Not uncomfortable. The kind that didn't need to be filled. I reached up and touched my collar. I'd almost forgotten it was there. That was the thing about armor you chose. It disappeared into you, became invisible, until the moment you realized you didn't need it anymore. Damien noticed the movement. His gaze didn't sharpen. Didn't judge. He waited. I put this on because I didn't want anyone to decide things for me, I said quietly. It was a line I drew where no one else could cross. He nodded once. I understand. I don't need it anymore, I said. My hands shook as I unclasped it. Not because I was afraid, but because letting go is its own kind of risk. The collar came away easily. It felt like taking a full breath after years of shallow ones. I set it down on the counter. Black composite against cheap laminate. Just an object now. No power, unless I gave it some. Damien's gaze flicked to it. Then back to me. His expression was unreadable, but his voice wasn't. That was your choice, he said. Yeah, I replied. It still is. He stepped closer, not crowding, not looming. Just present. What happens now? I smiled, small and real. We figure it out. Outside, a notification chimed. Another announcement, another statement about reform and accountability. The system trying to rebrand itself in the ashes of its own arrogance. People will try to rebuild it, Damien said. They always do, I said. The difference is now everyone's watching. He exhaled slowly. I don't know where I belong. I looked at him. Really looked. Not at what he'd been made into. Not at what he'd lost. At who he was becoming. You don't have to know yet, I said. Belonging isn't a destination. It's something you grow into. His lips curved. Just barely. You're good at this. Surviving? I shrugged. I've had practice. We stood there in the soft morning light, the city stretching out beneath us, imperfect and loud and stubbornly alive. No orders. No collars. No borrowed identities. Just two people standing in the aftermath, looking at a future that wasn't scripted. And for the first time that uncertainty didn't feel like a threat. It felt like space. The city looked different at dawn. Not cleaner. Not fixed. Just honest in a way it never was under artificial light. Steam rose from street grates, turning the air into something soft and dreamlike. People moved below us with the quiet determination of those who had woken up to a world that hadn't ended, just changed. Damien and I stood on the rooftop, coffee cooling in our hands. The wind was cold, sharp enough to sting, but it didn't bite the way it used to. No alarms in my bones, no warning buried in my teeth. Just winter. They're calling it a reform cycle, I said, scrolling through my feed. New councils, oversight boards, transparency initiatives. Damien huffed softly. Different words, same human instinct. To pretend we've learned? I smiled. Yeah. But at least now the lie is harder to sell. He leaned against the railing, shoulders relaxed. Knox resigned. That surprised me. Voluntarily? Yes. I nodded, letting that settle. Good. We watched the sun creep higher, light catching on glass and steel, turning the city into something almost beautiful. Not because it was perfect, but because it kept going. I've been thinking about what comes next, Damien said. Dangerous hobby, I replied. He glanced at me, amused. I don't want to disappear. I met his gaze. You don't have to. I don't want to belong to another system, he continued. Another hierarchy. Still with you. But I also don't want to pretend none of it happened. I took a breath, the cold air filling my lungs, grounding. Then don't. We can build something smaller, messier, real. He considered that. You're talking about staying. I'm talking about choosing, I said. Every day, if we have to. The city hummed beneath us, alive and stubborn. Somewhere down there people were arguing over breakfast, laughing too loudly, making plans that would break and remake them. Damien stepped closer, not to claim space, not to dominate. Just close enough that our shoulders brushed. Equal. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I smiled, warm despite the cold. Good. That means you're doing it right. We stood there in silence, breath fogging the air between us, watching the day begin. I thought about the north, the white rooms, the disappearing names, the way fear used to live in my body like a second spine. I thought about the collar on the counter downstairs, inert and forgotten. About the choice I'd made to save a man who had come to take me. About the choice he'd made to stop being what they told him he was. Winter still had teeth. The cold still came, sharp and sudden. Slipping into cracks you didn't know you had. But it didn't own me anymore. The frost still came sometimes. But now I knew it was just cold, not fear.